Hi, good evening. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Recently, the issue of local government elections came to the fore, with the Housing and Local Government Minister Zuraida saying that there will be a paper that will be tabled to the Cabinet by mid-next year. To delve deeper into this issue of local government elections, we have joining us on the show now Thomas Fann, Secretary General to Gabungan, Demokrasi Tempatan, and Dato' M.Ali, Chairperson of the Save KL Coalition. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It's good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
Now, I think we should begin with talking about the benefits of having elected local government, because right now the current system of having them appointed by state government leaders, what is not working with that system? Why do we want local government representatives to be elected? I'm going to begin with you, Thomas.
Yeah, I think the main thing is accountability, So right now the process is that the state government, whoever is in power, has the right to appoint their own councillors into all the local councils within the states. And so the political master is the one that they are accountable to, not the ratepayers they are serving to. So I think that is the main issue, and with that also leads to issue of corruption, because I don't know whether you realize it or not, local councils generally are very lowly paid, as little as 800 ringgit a month, but they have influence over licensing and giving out contracts. So that's really a fertile ground for corruption.
Local councillors are paid below the national minimum wage?
Yes.
Because it's not a full-time position, right?
It's not an employment per se.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So Ali, maybe you can jump in here and tell us about, your coalition, because it seems to be precisely a coalition of ratepayers, people who actually are contributing to the revenues of the city, in this case Kuala Lumpur. What do you see as the benefits of an elected over an unelected local council?
So at the end of the day, the accountability, responsibility, delivery system. When I'm appointed through an appointment vis-a-vis an elected, take the mayor for example, mayor of Kuala Lumpur, Dato' Bandar. Now whom is he answering to? Is he answering to the Rakyat of Kuala Lumpur, the ratepayers? No. His boss is the Minister of Federal Territory.
Okay, but I do want to ask, if I could just jump in there. When you put your coalition together, and I remember, some protests over the hiking of the rate system, did you find that the city council, the mayor, responsive to the pressure that you were putting from, as it were, the ground up, not from his political master?
More than the mayor, the Federal Territory Minister then was the one who called for the town hall session, and he was trying to justify why the increase had to be made, to the extent where he, quote unquote, his own personal properties were affected, and he said, I had to answer to my wife. so that clearly speaks for itself. Who is holding the fort? Well, is it the minister or the Dato' Bandar?
Gentlemen, you talked about accountability a lot, and I'm wondering what happens when a leader in local government does not perform. What happens then? Can members of the public, quote unquote, sack local government, or is it up to whoever appointed them, the state government or the federal territories?
Obviously not, because you didn't elect them, and you cannot remove them, and a lot of time I think the ratepayers don't even know who are their councillors, and how they should even go about bringing about a complaint or a suggestion for improvement. I think that also creates a situation where the disenfranchisement of these ratepayers lead to an attitude. To me, is a bigger concern. I pay, you work. I'm not going to bother with. I have no ownership of my community. I think that is actually part of a big problem that we have today. People who don't really care for their community as a result.
Ali, I mean, clearly, with your coalition, it demonstrated people wanted to participate and wanted to take ownership of the issues around urban planning as well as that rate hike. Tell us, in your journey, I mean, when did you start to feel that, as a denizen of the city, you had a right to have a voice?
I mean, this is goes back to historical background. When as mentioned, Kuala Lumpur City Plan was the initial move. The Kuala Lumpur City Plan 2020, when the whole plan was development per se. We are not against development, but we want sustainable, balanced development. So when you don't engage with the communities and just bring up a plan which is evolved by the planners, the consultants, and you say this is a plan for the city. When we started the coalition, it was only a couple of people, then we expanded to about 30 over RAs, NGOs, concerned citizens of Kuala Lumpur came forward to voluntarily contribute the ideas. Okay. And then at that stage we went through over 62 sessions with City Hall through sheer force, saying that we don't agree to the plan at all. So the whole thing was reviewed, and at that time the late Tan Sri Aziz was the chairman to take us through. With him having had the background, we went forward, and we had a lot of engagement. And going back to City Hall again, at least in the case of the local councils elsewhere, they are appointed probably by the political masters. Here you got advisors who are only from the professional bodies without the stakeholders being interested party there.
Okay, I just want us to perhaps challenge an assumption that we've made at the beginning of the show, that having elected representatives leads to better management. Is that something that we can take as a given, that having an elected local government representative means that there will be better management, Ali?
No, that comes back again, because when you are elected, you are answerable to the citizens or the stakeholders directly, not your political master. So if you don't perform, the next election you get thrown away, or people may starting agitating to say that we have no confidence in you for removal. So there will be a machinery has to be put in place. So,
but I think, as Melissa said, it's an ideal situation, because we do elect our federal government, we do elect state governments, we don't necessarily get the best out of them anyway.
And we don't so
Thomas,
them.
tell us, I mean, you're with Berita 2.0 as well. I mean, the ideals of a democracy don't necessarily lead to those outcomes, right? I mean, more would have to happen.
I agree, it's not ideal, even with our MPs and aduns right now, but we work towards an ideal. And when you have elections, you have an opportunity at least, to hold them accountable at every 5 years, But when you don't even have that, like in local government, you have no options, And so I would say that it's not perfect, but at least with elections, you can hold them accountable and put pressure to bear on them.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but let's continue this conversation. There's a lot to unpack tonight. We will be right back and continue this conversation with Thomas and Ali in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned to consider this. If you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. We're speaking tonight to Thomas Fann, Secretary General of Gabungan Demokrasi Tempatan, and Dato' M.Ali, Chairperson of the Save KL Coalition. Gentlemen, I want to talk to you about the pushback from the proposal or the discussion about having local elections. I mean, PAS and UMNO have already said that they're not going to support it. Is there political will to see this through, even though we have the Minister of Housing and Local Government saying that there could be a paper by the mid of next year?
Thomas? And in fact, the arguments they seem to be making, whether it's persuasive to you at least.
Well, I mean, one of the more common argument put forth is the racial issue. In other words, the urban centers are dominated by non-Malay, and if you have local council election, the large councils will be dominated by non-Malay. That may be true in the 60s, or 70s, but by today, 2020, the demographic has shifted. And in fact, most urban centers are Malay majority, and there's only 6 councils out of 154 where there is a slight Chinese majority, and these are not even the big council like KL or PJ. is the Ipoh, is the Sibu, Kuching Selatan, and the Penang, and Iskandar Putri. So this argument doesn't hold water anymore because the disenfranchisement, if you want to use the racial angle, is actually the urban Malay. The other reason that often put forth is the cost, of running local council election, and at this COVID time we can't afford it. But I want to ask the question, can we afford inefficiency, wastage, and corruption? Those probably cost more than the cost of running an election and hold councillors electable. But the real problem is actually very structural. Why there is always pushback by whoever is in government, whether it is PN now or PH. The reason is because the power is concentrated in the federal government. And if you take local government out of state control and let it be elected, the state government actually become redundant.
That's actually very fascinating. I do want to ask you, just to come back to some of the arguments, that one of them was the question of race. Ali, in your coalition, does race, ethnic identity play a part? I mean, are you all gathered there, divided by ethnic identity? What's the dynamics for a coalition like yours?
Bearing in mind it is KL, though.
It
right?
is KL.
This is KL. It's a multi-racial, multi-religious, multi-platform. We are an international potpourri, okay? So it's nobody thinks about race when it comes to you, because tomorrow you could be having a massage parlor next to your house if you don't wake up. So these are things which affects everybody, whether you're a Malay or a Chinese or an Indian or a Kadazan Dusun. So question of development, question of infrastructure affects across everybody. So we have come together collectively because it's a common issue. It's a common interest.
Thomas, you said the racial factor was one of the concerns about having a local elections. You talked about cost and you talked about the concentration of power in the federal government. Bearing in mind all of this, who then is for it? Who will support this move for local government elections?
Well, Zuraida, clearly, as one person.
And I was going to say congratulations to YB Zuraida for taking the lead again.
Yes, she's a lone voice among the politicians. But to be fair, there are many others who do support the restoration of local council election. I use the word restoration because it was there until 1965 when it was stopped. And then eventually 1976, it was halted totally through the Local Government Act. But who is for it? The ratepayers, the citizen. And I think that is an important point, that if we want to see restoration of local council election, the public and the businesses especially need to get behind it, because efficient running of councils and the lack of corruption is good business for all. Yeah.
Right. I do want to ask you about the dynamics between, the 154 local councils, and I think the sum that Zuraida had was 2 million per election, 308 million, to get my math right, for all these councils. The question is, are the problems of in terms of different sizes matter? The politics or the dynamics differ between big cities and small cities?
Certainly. Cost-wise, it does matter. 2 million to have an election in Petaling Jaya, for example, or KL, is totally unrealistic.
Or Subang Jaya.
Or Subang Jaya is totally unrealistic, because of the size of this council and the number of people involved. But the budget of these councils are actually huge. They are even bigger than a lot of states in Malaysia. The budget of Petaling Jaya is bigger than Perlis by several times, And so I would say that the cost is not the issue. But the dynamics is also different, the issues, in the rural area, your concerns will be, for example, the water, the land and things like that, utility. But in the cities, you've got development issues, you have safety issues and many other issues, more complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we were to focus on, say, big cities, what's wrong with the way big cities are run right now? You talked about, ratepayers and businesses. benefiting from having elected local councillors. What's wrong with our cities now? Maybe Ali,
Okay,
you
take
can
Kuala
weigh in.
Lumpur for instance. After the messed up Kuala Lumpur City Plan, we call it the 2020, City Hall has come out with the draft of the Kuala Lumpur Structure Plan 2040. Okay, the Structure Plan 2040 is a KL for all, and they are talking about 20 square meters per resident of Kuala Lumpur as recreational open green space. So we are asking them, where is the space in Kuala Lumpur? Could you show us? I mean, you don't go and put us under the pylon of the electric Tenaga cables and say this is going to be part of the process. I mean, first itself they're static. You know, is it healthy to go below the pylons? So these are the challenges we are facing.
Right.
Ali, do you think that the city governments lack expertise? Not just to manage efficiently, but also to think in innovative ways. A lot of cities around the world are pushing ahead to improve quality of life and bring innovative ideas to the city. KL, is it a creative government that we have?
Well, if you don't engage with the stakeholders per se directly, how could you be creating a city for all? And because of the MCO pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, the engagement sessions have been called off. Now they started going on to the hearing session. I mean, we had to do all online submissions, and we told the mayor and the city hall that you must have effective personal engagement sessions, because how many people in the city per se are they in a position to do online? So they have not had the engagement sessions what we have been demanding, like we had say 62 in the Kuala Lumpur City Plan Structure 2020. But the structure plan, there has been no engagement. On the contrary, SKL, we had organized on the 4th of March to brief the various stakeholders in Kuala Lumpur how to go about it, how to handle the thing. Fortunately, after that, the MCO came into play.
Right. Yeah, it has disrupted a lot of our plans,
Sure.
but we're going to take a quick break and come back and continue this conversation in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned to Consider This. Hi, thanks for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation with Thomas Fann from Gabungan Demokrasi Tempatan and Ali from the Save KL Coalition. Now, recently, Sharaad and I spoke to Lim Ma Hui from Penang Forum on the show, and he, in his book, Local Democracy Denied, made the argument that the problem with local governments is both the absence of elections as well as the absence of citizens' participation in democratic decision making. And gentlemen, I want to touch on that. Democratic participation without elections. Local elections is not going to be restored overnight, but it also means that ratepayers and denizens of cities need to participate in the democratic process of local government. Given that we haven't had local elections in many years, and that this seems to be something both of you echoed, that we don't seem to care about our community, not invested in our community, how do we go about changing that? Ali, you have specific experience in this matter. I'm going to get you to weigh in.
In the case of Kuala Lumpur, we have gone through the experience of blind developments coming in the area, or all green and open spaces being taken away. Even car parks being considered as open space. Are they really open space? This is a question we are posing. So therefore, we want the election process. While we are waiting, there must be effective engagements from the authorities, so to speak. We have been emphasizing the City Hall to engage with the communities of the local areas, because the needs of each area may vary. It cannot be across.
But do local residents want to engage? Are they aware? Are they interested? Are they invested in making sure that the cities are well run, well governed?
Many are concerned, but they don't know the channels how to go about it, basically. So it is the City Hall who should go and meet and engage when you say KL for all.
Yeah, well, giving City Hall, okay, so let's put them aside. I'm actually, the focus seems now that Malaysians have to take charge of their own lives, right? And I do want to ask, Thomas, this, you know, you use the word ratepayer, and it's a very interesting identity. I don't know how many of us think of ourselves as ratepayers. We might be paying the money, but how many of us think of it as that? How many of us, you know, are struggling with even the notion of citizenship? Many voters don't vote in the places they live and work. And how do we, that's a conundrum. How does local elections play into developing the idea of the ratepayer as a sovereign individual who has a right to speak?
Yeah, I think the I mean, over the years where citizens and ratepayers have been disenfranchised, in other words, no avenue was created for them to voice out their concerns. And as a result, I think people develop that attitude that really, I have no say, so I have no ownership in what is happening. But you know, everybody cares about the environment that they are in. They may not care about national issue, but when rubbish are not collected, or when there are securities concerned, their children cannot go out and play safely, they would be interested. You know, I think this is where it's incumbent that the local council need to provide that platform, an avenue for them to voice that. That is their democratic participation in a decision-making process. I think nobody is against development, but they like to be consulted before they go ahead or not go ahead. I think that dissatisfaction is because there is not much of that avenue, as Ali has pointed out. You know, I think yes, you can have more democratic participation, but without election. But having election holds these people accountable.
Is there a concern that having local council elections could replicate the political dynamics at the state level, at the federal level? Could we see that trickle down to local government? Can you run as an independent and win?
Well, I mean, yes. You know, one of the arguments against local council election is that it actually make the ground even more politicized, you know, polarizing the communities, you know. That's the negative argument, but I think we will argue that is the opposite of that, because it is these local issues that unite the people, you know, and not allow those national issues that brought up by MPs and all, like religion and race, that divide people, but it is a local issue that unite people. But having local council election also changed the political dynamic, because you actually open up the political space to people who otherwise would not have considered, you know, coming forward to be a community leader, to be a political leader. You look at Indonesia, we have Jokowi, and that's how he started, you know, in Solo, I believe, you know, and he became the mayor of Solo, and he did well, you know, and inspired the rest of Indonesia. He ran for the highest office and he won, you know. Right. And I think that allows an outsider to come in, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because we do have a lot of stories of mayors becoming, in fact, national leaders. And Jokowi went through Jakarta, right? I do want to ask Ali, you know, you have in Kuala Lumpur a lot of MPs who are not, who were, well, actually, in the last elections, they were with the federal government. But you now have them opposed to the federal government. Are the MPs of Kuala Lumpur on your side? Are they helping actively in the kinds of campaigns that your coalition has initiated?
Okay, it's a very good question you have posed, actually. Before G14, we had engagements with most of the candidates contesting in the Wilayah Persatuan Kuala Lumpur constituencies. There are 11 seats. Irrespective of the political alignment, we were open to everybody, and all the 11 candidates across PH signed that document with two BN candidates. So we had them signed, but after the election is over, it's a question mark. What is their commitment, engagement? So this is where we say across the board, if like Thomas mentioned, if you have got even individuals coming in, as you also raised, Melissa, that if as an independent, if you come in, would you be a threat to the structured political system? Well, if you are performing, why not you be elected and you serve your community at that place? So to answer that, I think politicians, once they get elected to their seats, then they should be committed and answerable to the local electorates.
Okay, gentlemen, we have about a minute and a half left, and I want to get both of you, thoughts from both of you. Where do we go from here? From this conversation, what do you want people listening at home to know about what we can think about in terms of local government elections? Thomas and Ali, I'm going to begin with Thomas.
I would say that the most important thing is that don't give up on this country. Don't give up on your community. Because if you give up, then the chance of actually seeing improvement is zero. But I would say take ownership. Take ownership of your community first and of this country, and speak up and form even citizens group that push for local council election.
Ali?
I strongly subscribe to self-help is the best help. If you don't help yourself, nobody is going to help you. So you have to be demanding, you should be pushing, you should have the perseverance. So we hope there will be many more YB Zuraidas within the structured system now, and even outside the system there should be many volunteers and the younger generation, for instance. They cannot just sit to the digital system or holding on their handphones and their mobile devices or their laptops. They should come forward, be conscious, otherwise tomorrow you will get all your green open spaces throughout the nation wiped out. Then it will be too late to save Mother Earth.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being
you.
on the show tonight. We really appreciate your time and your insights. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night, folks.
Thank you.